Greetings! In today's video, I will be taking a look at this beautiful wooden palette from Lightwish. It is a walnut palette that comes with a case. As you can see, it's this really nice smooth wood. It has 24 colors, comes with 2 swatch cards, and you can also use the case as a stand or an easel of sorts. So this palette comes in a box that I thought was a bit peculiar because if you look at the box, there's no photo of the palette or the case. All you have is this illustration on the cover of a landscape, but no image of the set itself. On the back of the box, you have the colors that are included, but that's it. There's no info on their format. There's no indication of what the paints will be presented as. Like, you don't know that they're going to be full pans. So I thought that was a bit peculiar, a bit odd. Otherwise, if I look at the swatch on the back of the box, the color array looks really nice. It looks like a good selection of colors. There's no obvious red flag when I look at these colors and these pigments. The only thing that puzzled me was the fact that this box doesn't show you what's in it. Then if we take a look at the box itself and the case is this fold-out model of case. It's a bit reminiscent of the cases you can have for an iPad or something like that. It is closed with magnets and works with magnets for the easel part as well. Like I said, you can use it as a bit of an easel. There's like 2 sets of magnets. It's a bit finicky, but I think it does work in a pinch, and probably as long as you don't put a lot of pressure on this little easel. The material of this case is not real leather. It is made to look like leather, but it's a synthetic material. There's a very faint smell to it, but it's not like a strong smell of glue or a strong chemical smell, nothing like that. This case, also, you can get it in brown, like I did, or in blue. Now, there is one issue I saw with this case. As you can see, the case wraps around the palette itself. It doesn't really prevent the palette from slipping out because it is open on the ends. So if you carry the palette at the wrong angle, gravity is gonna win and it's gonna make the palette fall. I found a way to secure the palette in the case because I had these elastic bands on hand. But yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Now, the palette itself is really pretty. It is nice, smooth walnut, and it seems to be genuine wood, not particle board or plywood. Like, this seems to be genuine solid wood, so that's good. It is really nice and smooth. The layout itself is pretty simple. You have a base, sort of the tray, that's the bottom of the palette, and then the top of the palette opens up in the middle and opens on each side to give you mixing areas. If you look at these flaps of the top, you can see that one side of them has a little indent to help you hold on to it as you open the palette. The hinges seems to be really good, and the whole thing is held close with magnets, which seems to be the really common way that they do this now. The mixing areas themselves appear to have some sort of plastic or plexiglass white surface at the bottom to help you with mixing. Now, it beads a little bit, and I feel like that's something that would probably really diminish the more you use the palette. But yeah, it has a slight beading as a surface when you get it brand new. The bottom of the palette, the tray part of it where they put all the paints, it is split in 5. There are 4 even sections, and that's where you'll find the 24 full pans of the set. So you have 6 colors per section, and then you have one larger section at the bottom that is left empty, but I think that's meant to be the place to put your travel brushes, your pencils, markers, ink pens, whatever else you need when you go painting. The bottom part of the palette also comes with a transparent plexiglass protector that you can put over the pans and the empty spot. I think that's a really interesting idea. It can be really handy to have a piece of plexiglass on hand when painting. You can put your painting on it, like your paper. You can do mixing on it, and it would indeed be handy to keep the pans in their place, and if they're wet, it might prevent messes from happening. It is a bit tricky to take out, but if you keep the bottom row empty, you can just tilt the plexiglass by pressing on it in that area, and it will tilt upwards, and then you can grab it. I also have a sketchbook, a watercolor journal. This one is 100% cotton paper. It is hot press. Now, that's a bit different. I usually get cold press. Not that I have a big preference, but they behave just a little bit differently, and depending on what I want to do, sometimes I go for cold press, but for illustration work, hot press is really handy. So I wanted to try that out. It is 300 GSM or 140 pound paper. That's kind of a standard paper weight. The size of the sketchbook, since this is a sketchbook that comes from China, it is measured in millimeters. So it is 195 millimeter by 130 millimeter, or in inches, it is a lot less of a pretty number, but it is 7.68 inches by 5.12 inches. The sketchbook itself has 20 sheets, and it It has an elastic to keep it closed, a ribbon bookmark, it has a pocket in the back, and also all the sheets are pre-perforated, as you can see here. I will quickly take you through the colors that are in this set. So like I said, we have 24 colors here. They come in full pans. The pans themselves are not labeled. They don't have any number ID on them or any kind of info. Your only reference point is the swatch sheets that came with it and the chart on the back of the box. The set comes with 2 swatch sheets. I don't know if that's how it's meant to be. Usually we get 1. So when I saw 2, I was like, oh, is this an improvement or is this a mistake? But I quite like having 2 of these. It is quite handy to have 1 blank, because if you decide to change the colors that you have in this set, you can probably, tinker a little bit with the blank sheet and make a brand new swatch sheet, but with your new colors labeled on it. The swatch sheet, they come on nice paper. It seems to be a good cotton paper. It swatched really well. And then also it is worth noting that the pans are not secure in the set. There's no system there to keep them in place, so they kind of move around a little bit. And since they don't fill up the whole width of the bottom tray, yeah, there's a bit of leeway for them to move around, but it's not annoying. It's not to a level that it will bother you when you pick up paint. This color selection, in terms of what we could call primary colors, it gives us 2 yellow colors, 2 red or magentas, and 3 blues or cyan. Then if we look at it in terms of secondary colors, we get 3-ish oranges, 3-ish purples, and about 4 green colors. You also get 2 neutrals and 5 earth colors in this selection. I am counting 17 single pigment colors and 7 colors with 2 pigments. I'll go through each color just to give you a bit of info about the color and a bit of my thoughts and impression, if I have any. The first color we start with is one of the neutral colors. It is the zinc white. It's a PW4 color, which is usually more of a transparent white. But in this case, transparent or not, what I'm most stricken by is the fact that it's kind of beige. It is more like a buff titanium kind of color than a white color, but buff titanium usually is PW6 colon 1, so it's not even the right pigment code. Not entirely sure what's up with it. I don't really mind having a beige color in the set instead of a white. It's a bit more useful to me than a white would be, especially a transparent white. It is definitely unusual. Then we have our 2 yellows. We have Hansa Lemon. It's written Hansa with a Z, but it's usually Ansa with an S. Anyway, Hansa Lemon, it is pigment yellow 3, a really common pigment, and it makes for a really nice sort of neutral yellow that is really handy. Then we have yellow medium, our second yellow. This one is made with pigment yellow 154. It is a slightly warmer yellow, but still very in the realm of yellow colors. I really quite like this one. Then our oranges. Now I put the yellow deep and the gold ochre with the oranges because of the color that they are in their mass tone. You could arguably use these as a yellow in some way. They're a bit in between. They're sort of yellow oranges. So the yellow deep is PY65. It is, like I said, sort of a yellow orange, a really smooth and even color. It doesn't shift from mass tone to dilution, and it really bridges well between our yellow medium and the orange we will see just a bit later. The second color I put here, the gold ochre, I was a bit on the fence with this one. There's a lot of stuff happening here that I thought were unusual. So first of all, this is called gold ochre. Fine. It is said to be a pigment brown 7, which is usually a brown iron oxide. Now, we will see later on at the end of the list all the earth tones that also use PBR7, and those colors are a bit more what you would expect from this pigment. This color, the gold ochre color, it reminds me a bit more like what a quinacridone gold hue would look like, or a nickel azo yellow, that transparent yellow. There's definitely some indication of transparency in here because of the way the color is so much darker in the mass tone, and then as you dilute it becomes a bit less orange, less brown, and a bit more yellow. So I'm not entirely sure what's up with this color. I think it is really pretty and I would definitely use it in my paintings, but the pigment code here is confusing. Next we have our real orange color. It is named orange and it is made from pigment orange 34. It is a really nice orange. It is nice and even and as orange as you can get. However, this pigment is not known to be very light fast. That is something to keep in mind. Also, it is worth noting that even on this chart, they gave it 2 stars, so they're aware that this color is less light fast. Then we are moving on to the red and magenta colors. We have one red and one magenta. The red is red light, made with pigment red 112. It is a naphthol red pigment and also not the most light fast, unfortunately. As a color itself, it is really nice. It is just a little bit muted and just a little bit purple red instead of a slightly orange red. And then we have carmine red. This one is PV19, one of those quintessential quinacridone pigment. It is a really nice color, really good sort of magenta, very versatile color. Moving on to our purple colors, we get 3. So we have Madder Lake Deep, which is a bit of a, magenta purple color. It is made from pigment red 176, which is also a not very light fast pigment. So it's a bit odd here to see that the previous color, carmine red PV19, which is a light fast color, gets the same light fastness rating as this Madder Lake red color that we know this pigment is less light fast. And then we have 2 violets. We have violet light and violet deep. They're kind of the same basic idea, and since both of these use PV3, which is a not light fast pigment, they are labeled with 2 stars. Now, PV3 is a bit of a problematic pigment because it is, like I said, not light fast, but also it is not very environmental friendly as far as I can tell. From what I read, they say that it is harmful to living cells and organisms, and it is a topical fungicide and disinfectant. Now, I don't really know how it would affect anything with the way we tend to use paints as watercolorists, but I know some people are really adamant about the toxicity of their paint, so this is something to keep in mind. They could have gone, I guess, with a dioxazine purple, which at least would have been more light fast. But yeah, here we are. We have violet light that has our PV3 that I just rambled about, and then PR122, so a good slightly purple magenta color in a mix, and then violet deep, also PV3, but this one is mixed with ultramarine blue, PB29. At least PR122 and PB29 are light fast pigments. The issue really is with the PV3. Next, we have our blue colors. We start with blue, which is phthalo blue green shade. It is sort of our cyan color, our yellowish blue. It is really nice. I really quite like this one. Blue is PB15 column 3, which is the usual pigment for phthalo blue green shade. Then we have ultramarine light. So this one is our reddish kind of blue, and it is, pretty nice too. It is PB29. This ultramarine seems to have a slight granulation, which is quite nice. And then we have indigo. Now this is interesting. It is not a light fast color, but the reason why it is not light fast is because it is made with synthetic indigo pigment. So you get a color that is very interesting, and it's also quite nice to see this particular pigment in a mix, even if not light fast. It makes for a really pretty dark blue. The next color is bluish green. I've put it with the greens instead of the blues. It is a color that is sort of very present in a lot of ranges, but often presented as sort of a phthalo turquoise or a turquoise mix. It is a combination of PG7, so that's phthalo green blue shade, with PB15, so that's phthalo blue, the more sort of general pigment. And when you mix them together, you get this really nice teal color that is super staining, super transparent, and that has a really strong mass tone. Then we have emerald green. Now, emerald green has the same pigment as bluish green that we just saw, but they are obviously in a much different ratio. There is a stronger focus on the PG7 part of the mix here, because this color seems to be pretty on point for just plain PG7. I would guess that there's not that much PB15 in this mix. The third green color is named sap green. As far as name matching my expectation of the color, this one is a miss, but as a green, it is very pretty. I really like the green. It reminds me a bit more of those colors that are named something like yellowish green or May green, that kind of stuff. It is a mix of, again, phthalo green blue shade, and this time we have Hansa yellow with it, PY3, so the same color we had in our first yellow. The mix of these gives us that color. And then the very last green also has PG7 in it. It is named Green Deep, and it looks a bit like a perylene green, but it is a mix of PG7 and a black pigment, PBK7. I am not entirely sure why this one gets 2 stars for light fastness, because PG7 is usually quite light fast, and lamp black PBK7 is also very light fast. So that's puzzling. We are almost at the end of the list, bear with me. The earth colors. We get 5 of them, and I gotta say, I really like these. The first one is Raw Sienna. It is PBR7, our pigment brown 7, so a brown iron oxide. The color itself is really nice. It is a bit reminiscent of a Raw Sienna, so we like that for a color named Raw Sienna. Usually, this color, Raw Sienna, can come as such a wide variety of pigments that it's a bit difficult to really source what it's quote-unquote supposed to be like. As far as I can see, this light tan color works really well. The application of it is nice. It is not patchy like some Raw Siennas can be, and I really quite like it. And then we have Burnt Sienna, which is the same pigment, PBR7, but this time it is more of a orange-red-brown color instead of a yellow-brown color. We have 4 of these colors here in this category that use the same pigment, and as you will see, it comes in a lot of different hues. Now, when we see this and it's a bit different from what you kind of expect of what you know, it's tempting to think that perhaps the pigment is mislabeled, and that's always a possibility. But as far as the colors themselves go, I think they are really nice. It gives us a really good range of earth colors to work with. So yeah, this Burnt Sienna, and then we have English Red, which is a lot like a PR101 color, like a red iron oxide, but it is still our brown iron oxide pigment, PBR7. And then we have Burnt Umber, which is again our PBR7 pigment, but this time we get a much darker, more muted brown color. And lastly, we have Sepia. Now this one is a mix of 2 pigments. We have PBK7, so that's lamp black, and again our brown iron oxide, PBR7. So all in all, we have these 5 earth colors that I think are really nice, are really versatile, and you cover a good range of possibilities with these options. The very last color is Lamp Black, which is a black pigment. It is a very light, fast pigment. It is our second neutral in here, and I don't have much else to say about it, but it is nice. After swatching the paints and going through all of that, the next step for me was to do a painting with these colors. So I took out the sketchbook they sent me, I did a little drawing in it, inked it, and then I set up to paint my drawing. Now, I did this during the holidays, so that's why the theme of this drawing is very holiday inspired. But also, I wanted to draw this specific topic, this Christmas tree, because I wanted to see how I could deal with the lighting effects and the layering and all of that with these paints, and I thought it would be a good challenge for these paints and myself. As we get a good selection of colors in this set, I thought it was suited to the usually very colorful Christmas trees, all of that. I knew it would also mean a lot of layering to get the effect I wanted, or as close to it as possible. Now, the only thing that I did a bit differently is I didn't use the white in this set, because as you saw, it is more beige than white, and I really wanted the possibility to add little white highlights. So instead of using the white from the set, I used a different white paint and also white gel pens. The sketchbook itself, I gotta say, I really like the hot press texture of this paper. It is really quite nice, worked out really well. I was able to layer everything nicely. There's no weird texture that came up. It is noticeably smooth, but it is not like the smoothness you would get from a Bristol or a Vellum. It is a very workable smoothness when it comes to watercolor, because you still have just the little tiniest bit of tooth in the paper so that your paints stay matte and lay down smoothly. When I painted the swatches on the opposite sheet, I traced a little circle and I used masking fluid, and it worked surprisingly well to use masking fluid on this paper. Sometimes, even if you go for the same brand of paper, between hot press and cold press, the main difference in terms of usage is how they handle sticky stuff. And a lot of the hot press paper really hates masking tape and masking fluid. This one did okay. I didn't leave the tape or the fluid on very long, so there's that to keep in mind, but it is a generally better performance than what I'm used to with hot press paper. Overall, I think this is a beautiful set. I really like it. I like the material. I'm loving that we're getting more and more nice wooden palettes. That's great. Less plastic, more wood, or something like that. And this one is definitely really, really nice. I feel it is a bit less of a travel palette because of the fact that it doesn't have any kind of setting behind it to prop it on an easel or a tripod or anything, and the case itself is not the most secure thing to keep the palette in there, as you saw. It works really well if you don't go really far. Let's say you go to a cafe and you have a table that you can set up your palette and your painting easel through the little case that comes with it, and you carry your stuff in a bag, so there's less of a chance of, dropping something and all that. But it would also work really well as a, desktop palette, something that you leave on your painting desk. You can very easily and very quickly quickly close it up if you need to, hurriedly sort out your painting area for other purposes. You just need to wipe the mixing areas from wet paint and then you can close it up, and that's good. Even if the pans in there are not completely dry, they're protected and nothing will get to the paints themselves. So in that aspect, I think this is a really nice set. I don't know if the case is something I would use as an easel for myself, but it's nice to have the option and it's nice to have the case to protect the set. The sketchbook I think is really lovely. My only gripe with the watercolor sketchbooks nowadays is the fact that all of them are perforated and I don't like the perforations. They create this area in the sheets where the paper folds really easily and it becomes a bit of a weak point. And if, like me, you keep all your paintings in your sketchbook, it's useless. I'm not gonna, tear anything out. So to have the perforation is not helpful. That's my only gripe. It's a very personal gripe, but I have to make do. And I'm looking forward to painting more in this sketchbook. I might have more insight to share once I've painted more. But so far, so good, and I will continue painting in this one. As for the color selection, I quite like it as well. I might switch out some colors. I might, just have fun with it because you can easily fit in any full pans or half pans that you want. I really like that. It makes for a palette that you feel you can customize and really make your own easily. So that's good. I might switch out some of the less light fast colors for similar colors that are a bit more light fast, or just, add some colors in there that I know I will use more. Overall, I think this is a really lovely palette and a really good sketchbook. And I'm very grateful to Lightwish for sending me these to try out. I had a fun time. I would love to know what you guys think of this palette. Like me, perhaps you've noticed that we see more and more wooden palettes out there, and I think that's awesome, but I would love to know what you think about this. So let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this far in the video. I really appreciate it, and we will see each other in the next one. So take care and bye bye.